iPhone and see. Hi everybody, this is Amit Peled, and I'm very happy to host our first cello chat here at Peabody. We are now in my studio at Peabody in Mount Vernon Place in Baltimore. It's a beautiful day outside, and I wanted to use social media to not only update you guys on what I'm doing in my performing career and my teaching as it happened before. I wanted to actually have it live in front of you. I get so many emails from students around the world, from cellists, from amateur cellists, from music lovers, people who want to know about anything that is involved having a career and teaching wonderful students. And unfortunately, there's not enough time to answer all those emails, so I thought it would be nice to have a live chat where if you ask questions, I'm able to answer them live in front of you and share whatever you need to know with me. So I have here one of my graduate students, Sunny. Come say hello, Sunny.
Hi everyone.
Sunny is a wonderful cellist who comes from China, and she's now also my assistant, and working with our class. We're 14 students here, working with all the students on scales, on our scale system, doing a Sunday morning scale routine and sharing the knowledge with the students, and by doing that, of course, reinforcing it on her playing. So she will get the questions from you guys if they come up, and read it to me so I can reply all the questions. Of course, I have my cello in the back, just in case, but this is really a chance to have a conversation and to discuss with you any ideas that you have. So as I said, here at Peabody, we have about 28 cellists, 2 studios. One is my studio, and the other one is my dear friend and colleague Alan Stepansky, who has also 14 students. And we try to combine here teaching, of course, the solo, the core solo repertoire of cello and the etudes and the scales, but also a lot of chamber music and orchestral studies, which is run now by Marin Alsop. So it's a lot of fun to engage with all those categories together. I just came back from lunch where I had a fun conversation with Leon Fleischer, who has been eating lunch here for 50 years at the same table, reading the New York Times, having the same soup, and it's always fun to encounter him at the cafeteria and discuss with him if it's politics, which you can imagine we discussed today as well, or music or any other thing. So it's really a lot of fun, and I'm hoping in the future to have here on this chair as guests any of the faculty members that you guys think that you want to get to know and have specific questions to ask. So we will try to do it weekly, and if anybody know a faculty member at Peabody or a student in that matter that you want to have a conversation with, let us know through Facebook, and we will try to have them here. So I think we have one question already. Sunny, what is it?
Yeah, someone asked, what precautions do you take when travel with Pablo?
Yes, that's a good question. What precautions do I take when travel with Pablo, with the cello of Pablo Casals? So first of all, I'm dead scared to travel with it because I don't want to be the one after 300 years to break it. So, of course, as with any good instrument, old Italian instrument, I have to buy a ticket for it on the plane, and it sits next to me on a window seat. The good thing about it is that I get the miles for it. So my status is very high. But, and also being 6'5", being so tall, I can put my legs under the cello because I always put the head of the cello down and up, so I put it upside down so I have more leg room. But the cello goes with me on the plane, of course, any other place. If we stop on the way and drive the car, of course I have to take it with me to the bathroom or to the restaurant or to any other place. But at the end of the day, the cello is a working tool, and you get used to it, and it's supposed to be a working tool. So I just use it as my companion, and I probably spend more time with that cello than with my wife and kids. So you get used to it, and of course with a lot of precautions, you make it a part of you. And yeah, maybe the hardest part is the airports, going through security and making sure that it has the right seat on the plane. But once that's done, it is really like another part of your body, which you just carry with you all the time. It was very interesting to bring Pablo here the first few times, especially since I always have Spanish students in my studio. And one of them saw the cello. He's not here anymore. He's now studying with Ralph Kirschbaum in LA, but he almost was in tears just to see the cello, and it ended up being here like a touristic place where everybody took photos to send home with the cello. So I realized that maybe I should not bring it every week to school, because it ended up being a touristic site at the studio. So that's about the cello. We also, there was something that I wanted to discuss, and it's the scale system that we do here in the studio. Sunny, of course, knows it very well, so maybe you can come up here and we'll discuss it, and bring the iPhone. But, so if you guys have any questions, we will...
They actually do have questions.
Oh, they do have a question?
Yeah, no more question. So, how would you address a student who has somewhat lost interest in playing due to injury?
Well, how do I address that's a good question. I mean, people go through injuries playing cello, playing any other instrument. I usually find it that injuries happens because of something that they do wrong with the instrument. Somehow the way they hold it, the way they play it, doesn't make it for them free enough to incorporate the instrument into their body so they can be completely free. However, those people who get injured, they're usually very serious about playing cello, and they probably did it too much and in a wrong way. So I never encountered a player that had injuries and wanted to quit the cello. They wanted to get back to it as soon as possible, and in many cases, I think also with Sunny's case, the injury made her think carefully about what did I do wrong and what can I do better, so when I get back to the cello, which is what I love the most, I will do it much better and will be able to spend the time and the hours that I want to spend with it. It's usually people who are not in that school or in this school and in this studio that I encounter on the road, I should say, where they would ask me, I've been playing the cello for 10 years and I don't really want to do it, what shall I do? And my answer is quit right away. There's so many cellists, so many good cellists. It's not the easiest profession, so if you don't love it and you make it really your religion, probably you should stop and choose another profession, because there are enough of us. So that would be the answer for that. But not because of injury. Injury is usually because of doing something wrong, not because of not loving what you do.
Okay, another question. Someone was asking, what kind of routines oriented towards perfecting technique do you think are important to become a great cellist?
Well, to become a great cellist does not mean necessarily to have a great career. To become a great cellist is certainly a routine aspect of practicing, because to be a great instrumentalist is to be a great athlete, first of all. I mean, you need to have the facility as a performer, as a cellist, as an instrumentalist, to move around the cello and to be able to do what your emotions or what your knowledge ask you, what the piece actually asks you to do. The routine, at least for me, includes a very aggressive scale and pattern system, where I spend about an hour a day at least going through patterns for the left hand and for the bow, making my students do the same thing. And through those patterns and those scales, we make sure to maintain a certain level of athleticism on the instrument, so we can play octaves, we can play finger octave, we can play third, sixth, fourth, arpeggios, we can play any kind of melody, any place on the cello, feeling free, feeling completely physically free. So when we encounter those positions, those melodic lines, those rhythms, those double stops in the repertoire, we don't really have to practice it there. But the practice is methodically, it's systematically, and it's daily. I mean, I don't know any great performer that can stop practice those scales. very fortunate to play in a piano trio, the Tempest Trio, with Ilya Kaller, who is one of the greatest violinists today. And besides being good friends, I get to spend a lot of time in hotels next room to him. And I tell you, even a guy who won Paganini, Tchaikovsky, and Sibelius competition first prize, even those people every day practice scales and extremely slow. That's probably in the last 10 years being in the Tempest Trio has been the greatest lesson for me, is to realize how much it takes for an unbelievable, phenomenal violinist to keep his own level. And I'm not talking about hours of playing, I'm talking about an hour, but what one does in that hour. And that has been a great lesson for me. Playing with Ilya and spending so much time and realizing that those scales are so crucial. And of course I do it myself as well and force my students to do it.
Yep. Someone is asking, what kind of bow do you use when playing Pablo?
That's a good question. What kind of bow? Well, I have 5 bows that I use. I love heavy bows, which is a big problem because it's hard to find them and it's much harder to sell them. So I always know that if I actually buy a bow, it will stay with me forever because nobody will buy it besides me. Even though I just saw on Teresio that the Jacqueline Deprez bow is for sale, and it's the kind of bow that I like. It's from 85 grams and above, and this is 87, so it's pretty good. I like from 90 grams above. So I have one Panorama bow, and I have a couple of copies of that Panorama made by Benoit Hollande, who is an amazing, maybe the best living bow maker. And I have a bow by David Samuel, who is also a model maker, who made a heavy bow. It's 95 grams, and it's a copy of that Panorama. And I have a Kaiba Farben bow, which costs $40, which I don't use, but I give it to one of my students. So it's a good question. At the end of the day, I found that with the Casals cello, I like to use the David Samuel bow because it's the heaviest one, and it sort of gives brightness to the very dark sound of that cello, and also amount of sound. The cello does not have the biggest sound when you play a concerto with orchestra, and with a 95 gram copy of my Panorama, I find that on that cello we get a great combination. However, I also have a Viom cello where I like to use the Benoit Hollande bow, which is a little lighter. It's 93 grams. It's still very heavy to the, let's say, the normal player. But for me, it's a great bow that has much more colors and layers of sound. But I find that with the Viom that has this big sound, it gives those layers a chance to glow. Where in the Casals cello, there's so many colors in it, and I find that having a bow that will just punch and bring out the sound is what that cello needs, or what I need with that cello. I always say that the bow, the cello, and the player should be a complete triangle. So I'm fortunate to have 5 of them to choose from. So those are the bows that I'm playing around with. Of course, to have a torque would be nice, but that's not going to happen soon. So I'm fortunate to be able to use those great, some old bows, the Panorama, and then some amazing modern bows that are complementing Pablo.
Another question. So I think a person, she's asking how long should her son practice every day if he wants to become a cello major, and then he's now 7th grade.
7th grade. So how long to practice? Well, that's such a hard question. I don't know. I can tell you one thing. I do not believe that a human being can practice consistently every day and being serious about it and concentrated and to actually get better if it's more than top 4 hours a day. I just don't know how to do that. Some of my students, including Sunny, who came here from China, used to tell me, oh, I just practiced 8 hours yesterday. That's the red light for me. That shows me that probably it was a lot of playing, but not really practicing. When we practice really well, we can do in 1 hour of slow and methodical and wise practice, we can do much more than in 4 hours of just playing through pieces. So 7th grade, when you have school, when you do sports, you do other things, if you can do 2-3 hours a day but do it well, I think it's more than enough. I mean, I started to play when I was 10, and until age 14 I really didn't practice or play. I mean, I did it for fun, I loved it. But from age 14 on, I practiced 4 hours a day. So I used to do 24 hours a week, that was my goal. So I would do 6 days a week of 4 hours and then 1 day of rest, which was usually my lesson day. I would just rest after the lesson basically, but the other days I would make sure to practice 4 hours a day, and it was very consistent, and my teacher wrote down, you have to do the starker etudes, then you have to do the scales, and then you have to do the popper for 20 minutes or half an hour, and then the concertos, and the sonatas, and the Bach suite. So it filled up the 3-4 hours easily, and it was very hard to do that. I needed to take a lot of breaks. So when people tell me that they need to practice 6 hours or 8 hours, I think it's wrong, especially when you're 13 years old. I think 2-3 hours of good, wise practice is enough. I almost always try to finish my emails to my students. I always say practice wisely, because I want them to understand that practice does not mean the amount of hours, it means the quality of what you do in the practice. And I find that doing it more and more in lessons, which I've started to do, especially this year, practice with them in the lesson and then sending me videos of practicing a phrase is really beneficial, because I see the result in the next lesson. If they actually practiced a phrase or 2 lines or half a page really well, and it took them a whole week, all of a sudden that page is like unbelievable. She's laughing right there because she just did it this week. So I think you can tell your son that 2 hours or 3 hours would be really a lot if he's guided well in how to practice those hours.
Okay, so what are some of your favorite halls to play around the world?
What are my favorite halls? So last Tuesday I played in a hall, in Cabell Hall in Charlottesville, Virginia. And it really is, without being polite to the presenter of that series, the Tuesday evening concert series, I think it's one of the most amazing concert halls I've played in. The acoustic is unbelievable, piano is great, the people sit around you, you feel very intimate, yet there are about 1,000 people sitting there. But to be honest with you, and then of course to play in Carnegie Hall or to play in Berlin Concert House was an amazing feeling. Wigmore Hall in London is unbelievable hall where you feel not only the acoustic but the history behind it and whoever sat there on stage. A year ago I was in St. Petersburg, Russia, and playing in the big hall of the Philharmonie with an orchestra. You walk on stage and you see the halls on the stage and you realize probably one of them is Rostropovich, and the other one is Natalia Gutman, and the other one is Misha Maevsky, and the other one is Geringas, and the other one is Pergamenchikov, who was my teacher. The other one is Yo-Yo Ma, and you feel, oh my God, I better play well. That's a feeling in those great halls. But what I want to tell you is, as an artist, probably what you have to feel is that the hall that you play in is the greatest hall in this moment. I mean, some of them are awful, but if you sit in a hall and you don't feel that this is the most amazing place to create music, probably what will come out will not be the greatest from you. So the hall should feel the greatest, and you should feel that the piece that you play is the greatest piece of music you're playing. Often people ask me, what is the greatest composer for you? And if it's in a recital, I'll just say, well, 20 minutes ago it was Schumann, because I just played Schumann Adagio and Allegro. And an hour ago it was Brahms, because I played the F major sonata. And 45 minutes ago, in another concert, it was the Couperin 5 dances. Because in that moment, as an actor, as a person who is actually is an ambassador of a composer to the public, if you don't feel that that composer, even if that composer is not good or that piece is not good, if you don't feel that this composer is the best and that piece is the most amazing piece, it will come out as mediocre or not the best or the greatest that you can bring it out. And therefore the hall, the chair, the piano, the pianist, which is hard sometimes, the piece are the greatest at that moment. And even if you don't believe in it, outside of the stage, on stage, it is the greatest.
Okay, this question's a little long.
Wow, I'm so happy to get so many questions, guys.
Know,
this
right?
is wonderful.
This is amazing. So as a student today, we see a lot of great performers, but we do not know anything about their teaching ability. How can we decide where to continue our studies if great teachers aren't given as much attention as the performers?
Yeah, the question is how can we decide? I mean, I'm assuming that you all see the questions when you look at this video, but how can we decide where to study, where, you know, some of the great performers are out there on YouTube or in concerts, but we don't know how they teach. So the first answer is, you know, if a great teacher can also go on Facebook and do this, that means that they're accessible to you guys. I think in this day and age where we have social media right there for us, we, not just the public, but we the performers should know how to use it to the advantage of music, which means if I'm available here in my studio for a student in Japan to ask a question, or in San Francisco, or in Israel, or wherever it is, I should use it, we should use it, so you can see what we do in this studio. Our concert at the end of the semester, we do every semester a concert here. It's called Cellomania or Cellobration. I already told my students, who probably hate me, but that concert is going to be live broadcasted on Facebook, so you guys can see what we do here. We have nothing to be ashamed of. There are many lessons online. It's very hard to engage with a teacher if you don't actually see them. So the computer hasn't been able to do that, but a lot of people can see me play on YouTube or see other teacher plays on YouTube. You're right, they cannot see you or feel how you teach. I remember going to study with Pergamenchikov, and one of the first things he said was, I want to make sure that you're teachable. I want to make sure that not only you play well and you're a nice person, that we have chemistry and I can take you to the next step. There's so many students today who just apply to a school because it has a big name. They don't even know the teacher, but they want to be in that class. I tell them, even if that class is mine, don't do that. Just come, have a lesson. Maybe even write an email to one of my students. Have a phone call, have Skype conversation with them. See if that kind of teaching, that kind of intensity, which is certainly here the case, if it fits you. Does it fit you to give comments, to audibly speak to every studio performance, every studio class, to give comments to other people? This is something we do here on a weekly basis, and some students are opposed to it because they're shy. So can you do that? Can you perform scales in front of your friends? Can you be away from your teacher for 10 days because your teacher has to go and play Dvorak? Can you have a lesson, can you have 4 lessons a month, but some of them, 2 of them are in a week, and then 2 of them are spread out because your teacher is a performer? It's something that you have to make sure that you want to have for 4 years or 2 years. And the other thing is, do you want to be in that environment? Do you want to be in an environment where, for instance, in Peabody, where piano is very strong, and you can play sonatas with unbelievable pianists who come to study with Fleischer? Do you want to be in a very quiet city like Baltimore, not exciting like New York, because you can sit and practice and not be disturbed by other things? So maybe you do want to be in New York. Those questions, I think, are very important for people to ask before they commit to a school or to a teacher. A teacher and a student is a dialogue, and there must be chemistry. In the last 14 years that I've been here, I've been fortunate to have amazing students, but also I've had, I can count, 2 really great students that it just didn't work because they did not want to try what I asked them to do. And then I just opened the door and said, guys, go, there's so many other teachers, and I'm happy they did it. Because if there's no chemistry, it's one thing to say, oh, I studied with that teacher, but it's another thing to say, I went to that school and I actually got better. So that's what we're looking for, and I'm not saying that this is the right place to do it. I'm just saying, pick and choose carefully, not because of a name, not because of a video on YouTube, because you've had the experience, at least an hour experience with a teacher, that you can engage with them and see, wow, that person can really take me to that stage where I want to be.
Okay, so you keep a very busy schedule teaching, performing, and taking care of your family. How do you balance it? And how do you constantly deliver at such a high level of playing?
Well, there's a lot of questions in it, but it's a very delicate balance. I feel very fortunate. I call it the triangle of my life. And the triangle is, first of all, my family, my wife and kids. And then the 2 other things that are for me really honestly equal is to teach and to perform. And I don't see myself being a musician without those 2. So if I spend too many days at Peabody, I get sick of it and I really need to go out and play concerts. But also vice versa. If I go on a big tour, I miss my students because first of all, they're humans, and I get really close to them, and it's like flowers. You see how they blossom, and that gives me such joy to see how they develop from something that is very small and undeveloped and talented into, in some cases, into a big open blossom flower. So that gives me a lot of joy, and I cannot see myself as a musician, as a person, not doing that. So the balance is to sometimes say no to concerts, but also sometimes say no to students. And that's very difficult. I have, on a daily basis, students ask me to teach them, what we call tryout lessons. And many times I just say no, because I just don't have the time. And I know that probably I might lose a student, or a good student, a talented student, but I need to practice. I need to see my family, I need to be on stage, and I need to see my own students. So the 14 students I have here are first priority. And the hour that I give them weekly is so important to me. When we are one-on-one here in this room, it's 150% them. And they know that, so they're not late, and they try not to be sick because I cannot give it back. But they see, I think, enough of me, and if I'm not here, they play for each other in the studio, so it's sort of a family-like studio. And then the family, I make sure to make breakfast for my kids when I'm home. I make sure to put them to sleep after I teach. I make sure to have few days in between concerts, if I can, and teaching, where I can be fully sort of a housewife. I mean, I take them to school, I shower them, I do homework with them. And so, a lot of people tell me, how much time you have with your kids as a quality time. And I know a lot of colleagues of mine as dads that, they go to work at 7 in the morning, they come back at 9 p.m., they kiss their kids goodnight, and they never see them. So I'm not here, half of the months I'm basically gone. But the other half of the months, I'm fully with them. I wake them up, I put them to sleep, I do homework with them, I take them to school, I bring them back, I between practice with them. And then what's holy for my family is the 3 months in the summer, where we constantly travel, but we take the kids with us, my wife and I, and we travel all over the world to festivals, chamber music places, concertos, teaching festivals, and my kids are with us all the time. So we just have to balance, I just have to balance it, and it's a very fine balance, because it can really break easily. And there were years where it broke in a way. And I felt that I'm teaching too much, and I felt that my playing is suffering, and vice versa. I was playing too much, and I felt that my students are suffering. And then the last part of the question is, how do you keep it in that level? And it goes back to a question before. I simply play scales and patterns. I mean, really, I do that instead of playing the pieces. I'll play thirds and sixths and octaves every day, instead of playing the Dvořák concerto and then go on stage and play Dvořák. Because I know that will keep me in shape, and going through the Dvořák probably won't. If somebody is busy and you have an hour a day to practice, or 2 hours, or sometimes less, if you do that, you keep your athleticism, your muscles in the right place, to be able to perform in that level.
Okay, we have 3 more questions. The first one is, when first starting to learn a new piece, like Ravel's Sonata for violin and cello, do you recommend listening to a lot of other performances, or not at all, before starting to work with your pattern and putting the piece together?
Well, it's a very good question, what to do when you learn a new piece. And what I try to do, it's very hard, but as you get older and more busy and busier, you have less and less time to learn a piece. So you actually listen to advice from more experienced performers. And I remember once being in a festival with Isaac Stern and having Natalia Gutman there teaching us. It was in the 90s. And she told us how she prepared a new piece, and that was so effective for me. She said that first of all, she never listened to a recording, but she learned it with the piano. So the cello comes last. Now, I can't play the piano that well to do that with some pieces. I can do it with some simple pieces, but what I do, I sing it and I conduct it. So I always make sure that I sing and conduct a piece to a point that I can sing the notes and I can conduct the rhythm and apply the articulation and dynamic before I touch it with the cello. Then I listen to it. And I listen, usually I try to get a recording like Pergamenchikov used to tell me, get a recording that is really bad. so you cannot be influenced by it and copy it. And I try to do that. I listen to a recording a lot. I don't make any judgment. I just listen to it, and then I know the morning when I wake up and start whistling the piece, I know that it starts to be in my system. That's my sign to take the cello and to start learning it. And once I have that feeling of whistling and singing in the shower, singing phrases from that new piece, I know that it's time for me to take the cello, which is just an ambassador for my voice eventually, and start figuring out what fingerings, what boings, and what else to do with it in order to present that piece of music with a cello. So really, my answer would be that the cello comes last when you learn a piece.
Okay. Any advice for students struggling with memorizing pieces?
Yeah, any advice for memorization? This is also a very common question. To be honest with you, that has never been a problem for me, and I never fight it. I mean, I never try to force myself to memorize a piece, because I know that if I do, it will probably not go in the pace that it should go. I've always memorized pieces just by playing them, and it just came, and one day it was just there. I don't know any scientific way to do it, but to contradict this question, I also don't think it's a big deal if one doesn't memorize a piece. I mean, that shouldn't be the barrier between you performing a piece and sharing your knowledge or your emotions or the piece itself with the public because you haven't memorized it. Personally, it's easier for me to memorize a piece and to perform. I don't have this barrier, this wall between me and the public. I feel more freedom with me and the cello and the public in that dialogue, in that conversation we have. Some people can play. Richter, come on, Richter played with the music, one of the greatest pianists ever, and it was pretty good. So if you feel that you can't memorize and it doesn't come naturally to you, maybe you shouldn't do that. I do, again, contradicting it, I do force my students to at least have the experience of playing a bass suite and a concerto once by memory, so they can feel what it takes, what kind of preparation it takes to be there in order to do it. But if it doesn't happen, there's a moment when that happened before where I tell them, okay guys, just play with the music, because this is not the main point. The main point is what you present to the public from the score. And if you cannot do it without the score, by all means use the score. For me, it's something that happens naturally. And I don't fight it, I don't plan it, and I let it happen. So I let my subconscious take over so it can happen to me. And so far it has been the case. Maybe one day it won't, and then I'll freak out and we'll go back to it and think of ways to do it. But so far it hasn't been the case.
Okay, another question. What are your favorite cello string combinations, and how often do you suggest changing them?
My favorite strings are Eva Pirazzi. Those strings are the one that I usually use because I've been playing on old instruments, and I find that Eva Pirazzi, or the new kind that just came from that company, those are probably the perpetual. I find them to be the right string for all instruments. Again, the right string for me, the way I play. It doesn't mean that it's good for other people, but why is it the right string? Because they have sort of brightness and edge to them that I find that all cellos need in a big hall. All cellos, like the Casals cello, have so much quality and colors, or the Guarneri cello that I played before, or a Vion cello that I own myself. Those cellos have so much quality that if you add to them a little bit of edge and brightness, they can soar enough in a big hall that they can get through to the last row, but you still don't lose the quality. Also, they are very thin strings, and I find that for the facility, for the agility of just moving around the cello, I find that having those strings make my life easier going up and down. I usually change the A string probably once a month because I play so much. And then the other strings not as often, maybe once in 2 months. I find that the two most important strings to take care of are the A and the C. Usually, often, cellists want, we all want this juicy C string, like juicy velvet-like powerful C string. And what we do, we put usually a very tight C string, so we get that. But what we forget is that we're killing the A string. And I find that by putting a very soft, which is the Eva Pirazzi, a softer C string, it really complement the A string, and then the A string has this kind of tenor-like Pavarotti sound, which I love on the cello, golden sound, and not this nasal sound that so many cellos have, and we know that kind of sound on A string, and many people say, oh, you know, cello has this nasal sound on A string. No. I think it's a lot to do with how we play, which is a lot to do with the body movement and the speed of the bow on the A string, but also if we free up the tension on the C string, it really allows the A string to soar and be more golden.
Okay. What can you say about Saint-Saëns' first cello concerto?
Ah, it's beautiful. Saint-Saëns' first cello concerto, come on, it's one of our biggest pieces, and it's a must piece for us to play. Saint-Saëns was a great composer. He wrote it, I believe it's the first big concerto after the Schumann concerto. After Schumann there were not so many, but then came Saint-Saëns and Lalo, and of course Dvořák later on. Schumann was a pioneer to write, you know, romantic big concerto. It was not played in his lifetime, but then following him, Saint-Saëns was really the first. Also, he was the buddy of Casals, so I always think of that when I play that piece, or the Allegro Appassionato. It's a piece that we all have to play, I think, not just because it's so beautiful, but because it's written so well for the cello. And it's sort of a stage in our development that if we don't go through, it's sort of a shame and a pity, because it's vocabulary that if we don't have, it'll be much harder to speak the language of Elgar, the language of Shostakovich, and the language of all the other great masters of the 20th century. So it's a book that we have to read and analyze before we go to the novels of the 20th century or the 21st century. A lot of students these days are avoiding Saint-Saëns, avoiding Lalo, avoiding Victor Herbert, and I don't understand why. Those three are major concertos. Many cellists don't even know that Victor Herbert was the reason for the Dvořák concerto. So if you play Dvořák, if you're in love with the Dvořák concerto, and you don't know how the Victor Herbert goes, not to mention not playing it, something is lacking in your preparation to embark on the journey of the Dvořák concerto. So I think the Saint-Saëns, I put them in one category in a way, the Saint-Saëns, the Lalo, and the Victor Herbert number 2. Those are three big concertos that we do have to know to play in order to embark on the journey of the 20th century pieces.
Okay. We have 3 last questions.
Okay.
First one is, do you have a favorite conductor, and would you go to a city to play a piece just to see the CD?
Yeah. Do I have a favorite conductor? Well, yes. I mean, there are quite few that I can count on one hand that are unbelievable conductor. I haven't worked with them yet. One of them is Daniel Birnbaum, which I simply adore, and I think I'll be too scared to even shake his hand because I admire him so much. I fanatically read his books and blogs and website and listen to his recordings and talks and lessons, and I learn so much from it. It'll be a dream come true for me to one day be able to play any concerto with him, or any kind of music with him, because he's such a great musician. I love Samuel Radl because I just think it's amazing what he has been doing with the Berlin Philharmonic, where I have few personal friends. Yeah, those two maybe stand out. Of course, Carlos Kleiber, who is not alive anymore, but he's maybe my greatest influence, and Chili Vedake. So luckily we have a lot of footage of these people for me to be able to watch and learn from. With Radl and Birnbaum, those two are so great and still alive, so I can at least still dream that one day I could make music with them in some form. Great conductors are rare to find, and for some reason they're becoming younger and younger, and it's this older conductor with experience and aura is something that I guess we miss today. And I find myself always go back to videos of the old masters where they would walk on stage and somehow, without dancing and moving their hair, something magical happens to the musician on stage and to the public, and those conductors are I'm most influenced by. What was the other question? If I want to go to a city to see it, and if I accept a concert, yes, I accepted. First time I went to Istanbul in Turkey was really to go to see Istanbul, and of course I fell in love with the place and found that Turkish people are so similar to Israeli people, even though we have so many political differences. And I walk up on stage and I immediately said to the people there, you know, we're so similar and I love your food and I love your people and I wish politicians would be just like us. So it was a really meaningful trip to Turkey to see Istanbul, and I've been going there every year ever since. Next season I'm going to go to India to play in Mumbai and in Pune, and I'm going to with a wonderful pianist, Marwan Ben Abdallah, who is half Moroccan, half Hungarian, half Muslim, half Jewish. I mean, it's such a combination. And again, of course, I get paid for it. But at the same time, I want to go there because India has so many secrets that I want to reveal as a human being. And one of the dreams I have is to play the prelude of the first suite in front of the Taj Mahal. So I will try to do that.
Okay. How long does it take for you to completely learn a piece or a concerto?
Well, how long it takes to learn a piece or a concerto, it's such a general question. I mean, it's very hard to answer. It depends what piece, what concerto, and how much time I have. I mean, when I was a student, I had a whole year to learn a piece, so guess what? It took me a year. But now, as a professional, sometimes I accept to play a piece and I have a week to learn it, so guess what? I learn it in a week, which means you have to learn how to practice wisely. I think I'm most proud of learning the Hindemith Concerto 1940, and I had 1 month to learn it and to play it at Alice Tully Hall in New York. And not only that I sat on my butt and just learned it, you know, so fanatically because I knew that there's a date and I have to play it, but also I fell in love with the music and learned it really fast. Another piece that I learned quite fast was a piece written for me and for Pablo, for the cello by Leva Alba. And I had 60 days to learn it from the time I got the music to the premiere I gave at the Kennedy Center for the piece. So having limited time forces you to learn it in a different way, which is, I can easily say, in a better way. However, learning a piece for a first performance is not the same as performing a piece after 10 times you played it on stage, or 20 times. So you sort of have to take it out of the oven and present it. And that first time is going to be the first time, because after 10 times it's going to be different. And time is the best lesson for those pieces. So to learn a piece fast and to memorize it or to play it clean is one thing, but to have a statement that is really you, like Greenhouse used to tell me, the Beaux-Arts Trio would record a piece only after 50 performances of the piece. That means, you know, after many times living with the piece in front of public, that's the time when you really know it in and out.
Okay, one last question. Do you always like and listen to piano and violin music?
Well, of course. Do I like to listen to violin and piano music? I like to listen to music when it's played well, when it's really amazingly played and the music comes out. I love piano music. I'm so jealous that I cannot create harmony with my two hands as pianists can. I love Radulupo, I love Horowitz, I love Rubinstein. I adore Perlman. I was fortunate to study intensively with Isaac Stern. So for me, it's really about the music that comes out and not the instrument. In fact, I force my students, not all of them do it, but I force them to take voice lessons because I think voice is the most natural instrument we can express music with. So it could be voice, it could be piano, it could be violin, it could be chamber music, it could be orchestral music, which is really unbelievable repertoire, and chamber music, string quartets, piano trios, all of it. I love it, I listen to it, and I encourage all of you guys to do that. I think we are out of time, so I want to thank everybody who was online today. And this was kind of cool to talk to an iPad and to have so many questions. So I will see you guys next week. We will do it again and we'll have more questions, and I might even have, not next week, I'm here again the end of the month. So I think we'll do it on the 29th or the 30th of October. We will have our next get-together, cello chat here from Peabody, and I promise to have an interesting guest with me at that time from Peabody. And so prepare your questions, and thank you for joining me. Thank you, Sunny, for your help, and see you in 2 weeks.